So we're going to go over labeling in this lecture, and there's actually a few different things that one can label. One can first label data sets, and then one uses the label data command, and one puts the label in quotation marks after the label data. One can also label variables, both string variables, and one uses the command label variable and then puts the label in quotation marks. And one can also label numeric variables as well, and again one uses the same command. Also optional with numeric variables is to assign a value label. So one doesn't have to do this, but it is optional. So what do you get by doing that? So what are the advantages of a value label? So well, there's some advantages and there's some disadvantages. The advantage is that it's friendly when you look at the variable results in a viewer or a graph or a table. The disadvantages is that there's some extra steps involved, so I should say maybe disadvantages. So there's extra steps. Some of these extra steps are a little bit confusing. And then the other disadvantage is that you have to kind of clean the data first before you assign this value label. So how does it work? Well, let's show you an example of the lens status variable, which will do the right eye the simple way by just labeling the variable, and the left eye the more complicated way, in which we'll label the variable and assign a value label. So lens status, you should know what it means first before we do it, has a few different options, phakic or pseudophakic. It turns out there won't be any others. This is assigned a value of 1, this is assigned a value of 2, and we have it for the right eye and the left eye. So the first thing we want to do with any variable, even before we label it, is actually look at what the outcomes of that variable are. And we see that the outcomes are 1, 2, and m being missing. So let's go ahead and just simply label it and tell us in the label what 1 and 2 mean. And we don't have to deal with the missingness right now. So we'll say label variable, and we're just going to tell you what 1 and 2 mean in the label. So 1 is phakic, 2 is pseudophakic. And we see where it shows up right over here. If we go back and we tab this again, nothing has really changed. We just have a different label over here, but all the values are the same. So we know what they all mean, but we have to refer to the label to figure out what they actually do mean. And we can do the same thing for the left eye as well. And now if we tab the left eye lens status, again we see the numbers, but we don't really we haven't actually really changed anything. We've just told you what they all mean. So now let's assign a value label. Well, we can't actually assign a value label until everything is a number. So it doesn't work on string variables. It only works on numeric variables. So we have to get rid of this m and then destring. I'm going to show you how to do that another time, but I'll just do that real quickly right now. So we'll replace it equal to dot if it's equal to m, and then we're going to destring it and replace it with the same name. Okay, so now it's a, if we tab it now, all those other m's just become missing, and we have a number, and you can see that variable is now a byte, meaning that it's a numeric type. So now this is the confusing part. You actually have to do 2 steps to assign a value label. first you have to define the value. But you have to use a command which is very similar, and it doesn't seem very different. So we have to, we call it label define. So you have to define the value label, and you have to give a name for that value label. So we can call it lens status. This is also the problem, is that the name of these value labels are very similar to the variable names, or to the names that or the labels that you've given to the variables. And then you have to say what each value of lens status means. So we have these values here, which are 1 and 2. We have to say what each 1 and 2 means. So 1 will mean phakic. I'll put that in quotes, otherwise it won't work. And 2 would be pseudophakic. So now, this is something which doesn't show up anywhere unless you list all the value labels. But there's this value label out there called lens status. And any variable which is assigned that value label, for that variable, all 1s will be shown as phakic and all 2s will be shown as pseudophakic. So now we need to assign this value label to the variable OS lens status. So again, the terminology here is very, very confusing. But if you can follow it, then you can consider doing this in the future. So you say label, and now you say value. So you're assigning this value to the left eye based on the value label lens status. So label, value, variable name, value name. Okay? And so now when we click on OS lens status, you can see that the value label assigned is lens status. So that's confusing enough, but do we really gain something meaningful from that? Well, kind of. So if you now tabulate if you tabulate OD, you see that the OD lens status, you simply see the numbers and the missingness. But if you tabulate the left eye lens status, it actually shows you that it's phakic, and you know that phakic is 1 from here, or it's pseudophakic, which is 2. If you don't really have a variable label which tells you that, sometimes you actually have to run the label list command, which tells you what the code is for that value label. The other nice thing about going ahead and assigning a value label is if you end up doing any bar graphs. So if I do a bar graph for the right eye, it gives me a nice graph, but then the categories are just shown as 1, 2, and m, which are the values of the variable. However, if I run that same graph for the left eye, it saves me a step of having to relabel all those by automatically giving me what I typed out as the value label. So anyway, that's an illustration of how you label variables and the complex process of doing value labels if you so choose. Thank you.